That's well said. To answer your question, I do think a lot of people know the idea of John Wayne Gacy, or really the idea that the media at the time kind of sold us on. So I knew what probably most people knew, sort of a cursory knowledge of him, that he was in Chicago, that he killed young men and boys, buried them under his house. And I, of course, knew the thing that everybody kind of knows, the clown, the killer clown. And when we began working on the show and I was doing research, the thing that I really discovered was that was a real kind of like a misguide by the media at the time. Obviously, the idea of the killer clown was going to sell a bunch of newspapers and whatnot, but as far as we know, he didn't kill anybody dressed as a clown. He didn't use the clown outfit to lure young boys back to his house. It was in a way even more messed up and sadistic than that. It was one of his many masks to kind of blend into society and make himself seem non-threatening and harmless. He would go to, children's hospitals and entertain sick kids, or be in a parade or the opening of an ice cream store. And it was just one of many kind of clubs that he belonged to. It was called the Jolly Joker Club in Chicago, was the clown society that he belonged to. And it was just all the different ways that he tried to make himself seem harmless. To blur the line and to create literal characters for yourself is the definition of premeditation. Some idea that this was all, either he was unaware of what he was doing because he was like in some other unconscious state, which he claimed is just a bunch of baloney. Like he planned this all out. He created these guises for himself. And everything he did was very intentional to not get caught. But we had such a wonderful group of people who came together to tell this story. An incredible cast of actors, an incredible crew in Toronto. I can't thank them enough. And everybody cared about the show so much. So I won't say that there was anything joyous about it, but we were all so invested in it, and we cared about each other. And we were always checking in with each other about our mental health because it was so hard. And so I walked away feeling very fulfilled that we had made something that I think is meaningful and hopefully tells this story in a different way than it's been told before. And it was the first time that I've ever been a lead on a show. You talk about Severance or Orange is the New Black. I love those characters, but I'm a supporting role. And to come in and have the responsibility of being in a leadership position, that was something I took very seriously. How do I say this the right way? I mean, John Gacy, until he got caught, he was doing what he wanted to do. He had no empathy for these boys and young men. I don't think he really had even real human compassion or emotions in the way that we think of them. I think he was a true psychopath. And so in playing him, I didn't really have to experience the darkness. Only after we finished did some of that come crashing down on me. But my job was in some ways easier than the rest of the cast.
My goal was ultimately to find every way possible to not sensationalize the story. That was the ultimate goal. It began with the victims, absolutely, but I'll give you a couple of examples. We don't show a single murder in the show on screen, not one. To your point of what you just asked about the killer clown, you never see the clown in the show. There are allusions to it. There is an immensely chilling performance that there are two that he gives that Chernus gives that alludes to it, but you never see it because the truth of the matter is that he didn't dress as a clown and kill people. He didn't dress as a clown and lure people in. It was just another one of his many masks that he wore in order to get by in society. I mean, he was a very affable, for lack of a better word, charming individual who was a precinct captain for the Democratic Party. He was the kind of guy that you could ask to like mow your lawn or ice your drive or salt your drive if it was icy. And so he really did he didn't even blend in society. He had a spotlight on him in the community, and that made him all the more terrifying. So we don't have to sensationalize him for the point of our show to get across, and that ultimately was the point. At every turn, avoid any sort of glorification and avoid anything that might be seen as salacious. And so what I want people to come away with is that there are heroes, there is systemic failure, but the prejudices that existed then exist today. And we need to ensure that we try to avoid those I think that they're all the more prevalent today. I think they're all the more accepted today, mostly driven by social media, and that ultimately those prejudices cloud all of our opinions, all of our judgment, and lead to a degradation of people, degradation of society, degradation of conversation, and ultimately lead to violence. And if nothing else, I want people to know that this is not a period piece. This is very much a part of today.
And in my particular case, I played Detective Rafael Tovar, who was ambitious and trying to just become the best detective he can be. He went from Crystal City, Texas to Chicago, Illinois, became a beat cop, eventually worked in Vice, and then became a homicide detective, and was one of the very few Latinos on the force. He was unique. He was singular in the way he kind of carried himself and conducted himself, and was kind of very stylish dude. When you look at images of him, he's just, everything you see is just like the rose tin aviators and the long hair and the mustache and the leather jackets, the cowboy boots, the jeans, like all of that was who he was in a world of very clean-cut kind of guys. He was able to straddle that line between the misfits and the outcasts and the good, upstanding people, quote unquote. And I think that's what really helped him relate to these victims and really inspire this crusade he went on to identify them many years after the case was closed. That's what my part of the story kind of comes to represent, which is just that, the kind of toll it takes on people's families and everybody who worked on this case, because really no one emerged unscathed. Everyone was tainted or had a little bit of their soul just kind of chipped away at by this.
I'm really impressed with the way that Patrick and the team managed to kind of craft each episode in support of one or two of the victims' stories, so that we actually get to feel like we're experiencing a few people's stories in depth, and then you can kind of imagine the other people's lives from there. In many ways, yes, and also it's part of what feels meaningful being an actor telling this side of the story, because so many parents went through this, that I ended up feeling like, right, we think a lot about in stories like this, like the killer and sometimes the victims, but to really actually think about what the families went through and to kind of honor that and pay respect to that in many ways, and to sort of tell their story about, then the rest of their lives were changed, and to think about that in such a in-depth way, that really gave me a real sense of purpose, honestly, with this show.